Hey, good afternoon, Paul.
Hey, Jason, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
Good, good. Thanks so much for inviting me to be a part of this very cool podcast.
Yeah, well, there you go. Nice wordplay. No, I'm excited to have you. We've been talking about this for quite a while, and we're finally making it happen. I was just recording another episode with somebody else that I've been talking to for almost a year. We finally recorded. I don't think we've been talking about it for that long, but I am delighted to have
Yeah.
you on, have the audience get to know you like I've gotten to know you, and have a fun conversation today. So I think we should just get right into it. What do you think?
Sounds great. I think actually you and I finally talking after this much time is a metaphor for the year 2020, and that is
Exactly.
delayed gratification.
Exactly. Delayed. It's a practice. We call that it's a practice in patience, which is something that I do not consider myself a patient person. So it's definitely been a year of that. I'm sure we're gonna talk more about that. So first things first, Paul. Love if you would introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, where you are in the world,
Sure.
anything you'd like us to know as we kick this off for today.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name is Paul Geiger. I am a public speaking coach and presentation expert here in New York City. And I've been working with clients, business people, and corporations and organizations for 12 plus years, just working on being clear at delivering a message and how public speaking is a part of all business communications. I also consult on personal branding, sales training, and public speaking for executives, managers, and for new hires. So I
Nice.
work with quite a wide range of people, and I have to admit, I don't have very many boring days.
I'll bet not. Bet you every session you go into is a little bit different because everybody's working on different things or has the. It's kind of like, coach obviously like athletics, but especially for what you do, I think everybody's got their little things that they're working on. So it must be so fun to do that.
They are, and it's wonderful because it really does. Every session does pique my curiosity
Hmm.
because I'm always intrigued by what individuals perceive as the things that are holding them back. So when they're able to communicate to me what that feeling is, I then translate it into, okay, well, what can we do about that? What do we need to adjust both on the physical side and on the mental side to be able to achieve that result? And it's really interesting. So much of it is about sensation. And the methodology that I utilize really tethers together what the perception is. So I get my clients to trust that what I'm telling you to do is going to make you feel better, but it's also going to make you sound better.
Hmm.
And we usually come to those results, but it takes some time.
Sounds good. Here we go. All right. So let's get into it today, Paul. So the first question I
Sure.
have for you is I'd love to hear. Actually, that's not a question. I'm going to ask you a question since I said I was going to ask you a question. What
Well,
is
it could
something
be
that yeah,
questions or
question,
requests. I mean,
question in
I'm
the form
taking
of a
them all
statement?
here. I'm like
Yeah, there
the
you go.
ideas DJ.
I love that. What is something that you nerd out about?
Something that I nerd out of. Oh,
Yeah.
I refer to myself as a voice geek. I nerd out about currently listening to holiday songs, and I know we all know holiday songs. We're really familiar with them, but testing my knowledge against, and I have to whisper this or else she'll go on, Alexa, and saying, knowing or guessing in my mind who is singing that song. And then I ask her, and most of the time I get it pretty close. So I geek out
Yeah.
on
Nice.
holiday, on singers, on songs. I also listen to when I'm watching TV with my wife. I pick out who the voice is, the actors, even if they're not
Yeah.
George Clooney. It's still knowing who that actor is, who that voice is. I geek out on voices. I really
That's
do.
cool. That's cool.
Which sounds sort of self-serving and kind of boring. And but I tell everybody, yeah, it's what I have always focused on all my life, something I've always prided myself on being able to pick out voices, hear what they're doing. Even if I didn't really know what they were doing, eventually I learned, but I could distinguish. And
Yeah.
I made mental notes. So, whereas my focus is on that 24/7, other people don't need to. Just listen to
That's right.
just listen to the things that I've learned along the way. And
yeah, just go hire Paul. Exactly. Go hire Paul and he'll help.
It's like,
you don't need to know all this
why
stuff.
that happens.
Yeah.
That's right. I can tell you why. I know what it feels like. I do. And I can tell you what's happening and why it's happening and what you have to do. It's not going to be easy, but I can tell you what to do.
Right. Have you seen the new feature that Google released last month around songs?
No, I didn't. Tell me about that.
You can hum and it will pick out the song for you and you hum it as the person. It's the next level past like what Siri does or what Shazam used to do until it was acquired by Apple. So you can actually go to your Google app on your phone. I don't know if you can do it on the desktop or not. You can do it on an Android device. You can do it on like a Google Home smart device, and you can actually say, what song is this? And then you can hum it. And most of the time they pick it, they give you what Google gives you, what they believe it to be with a percentage of confidence. And I've tried it on a few different songs and they've nailed it every time.
Wow.
And you can hum it out of key. You can hum it out of key because it's not looking for the key you're in. It's looking for it's looking for the vocal pattern.
Well, yeah,
or the musical pattern.
That's the same thing with all of this AI, like voice recognition. When you send something in, you send in an audio recording, it gives you back the text file or the SRT file.
Yep.
And it's amazingly accurate. Of course, some of the things they come up with, they've had a real tough time figuring out what Blabbit is.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so check that out. If you have an iPhone and you have the Google app, you can literally just say, "Hey Google, what song is this?" Then you can hum something, and I'm curious to see how it picks it up for you. It's a fun little party trick.
Well, is that also would that be available on an Android?
It is available on Android. Yeah, I think it's built into Android automatically. Yeah.
All right. There you
go.
I'm gonna try it out. I'm going to test it out. Which reminds me, this is an interesting observation that I've had when I'm working with my clients, is when they lament that people ask them to repeat things, maybe, once or twice or several times during a conversation. And I tell them, and I think this is true, I don't always think that it's the speaker. I really don't. I think sometimes it's the mindset of the listener. Mm-hmm. So I always tell them, don't beat yourself up as much as perhaps you are, because I have had experiences where I call up the insurance company or the credit card company, and I have to give them information. And they say to me, please, what's your name? My name is Paul Geiger. And then I give my address. And at some point, it doesn't happen all the time, but somebody goes, what? I think to myself, did I not say that clearly enough?
Right.
Wait a minute.
Like Paul Geiger, not that complicated.
Reason. No. I mean, I guess the what is based on, I'm trying to spell it, but I usually then go right into the spelling just so they get that right, because it's not always intuitive what the spelling would be. Anyway, so we do go through that experience. But I'm amazed that artificial intelligence does have such good voice recognition.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, I'm going to move on to the next question I have for you, and I'm going to give you a caveat on this question because I don't want to make this too easy for you, Paul. So we're going to talk about something that's inside of your comfort zone, and I'm just going to take anything to do with performing or public speaking or voice work off the table because that's just too easy. That's the layup. So what's something else that's inside of your comfort zone that might be outside of somebody else's?
I love graphic design.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I love envisioning, I do, as much as I am a voice geek and I'm enamored with audio of all shapes and forms and sounds. I still love the visual context as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I love working with graphic design materials and coming up with graphics. My wife often says, you should have gone into advertising, to which my response is, I've been promoting myself my entire life. I think I've been in advertising.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's something that I really enjoy doing. I'll tell you, of the various daily tasks and weekly tasks that we all have in running our own business, that's something that I really enjoy. I know that I could probably farm it out to somebody, but I just don't want to. It's just for me, it's very calming to do and to really try to come up with different ideas and try different things and color schemes and images and different fonts and whatnot. Obviously, I'm talking about using it in promoting my company and the various things that I do, but I just enjoy that. And I love knowing that somebody, not everybody, but somebody's going to see it. And that's always nice as well.
That's cool. Yeah, it's interesting. I never consider myself all that creative, but I actually don't mind doing design work either. I just don't think I'm very good at it. But because I'm not that attached to it, it doesn't really bother me to put stuff out there. Like I have a lot of friends that work in advertising or they're designers and they're so attached to their work because it's like their craft. So for them, nothing is ever good enough for me. I'm like, I don't love it. And I don't love the work I'm doing, but it's better than me doing nothing. So I think I'm like you, like as long as it doesn't take a ton of time, like for example, the podcast, I had somebody design my podcast artwork, but I actually do each episode myself. And I think you do this for Blabbit, which we'll talk about as well. And that's interesting. You got me thinking about that. And I guess that would be something that would be inside my comfort zone as well.
Yeah, something that wasn't inside my comfort zone and really was bedeviling me, but it sort of comes under the heading of what I learned during my crisis vacation. And that is how to video edit, how to use the latest software to take videos and make them look a little bit better. I'm not saying, as opposed to just take your phone and just shoot it and throw it up there on social media. Just trying to do something with graphics, trying to do something with the moving images and, inserting and overlaying certain things and doing different fades and different adjustments and whatnot. And it's interesting, what used to take me hours and hours and hours, though at the beginning of this crisis, I had hours and hours and hours. Now, luckily, I've trimmed that down about 1,000%. So now I can do a video a lot quicker, which is nice.
Very cool. Yeah.
It's nice to get that skill, to use it on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis, and get better at it. And just, once you have those basic skills under your belt, then you start to innovate and you start to do different things. And that's I have a creative side that I'm comfortable with, and I try to lean on it whenever I can. I do.
Very cool. So now let's flip that.
Yeah.
So what's something that you are uncomfortable with? In other words, it's outside of your comfort zone that is likely comfortable for other people.
Oh boy, something that is outside of my comfort zone. So obviously it would have to be something that I have experienced, or is it something that I would be avoiding experiencing?
Whatever. As a coach, Paul, what do you see to answer? I have no agenda for you over here. You do your thing.
All right. Oh gosh. The things that I don't like to do. Well, I would say, and this is going to sound kind of strange because I don't have any reservation or anything holding me back about getting up and socializing and talking with people. I don't really like being the center of attention. I really don't enjoy that. Like, I don't, I like to, if I'm in a social situation, I'm never comfortable, taking up all of the bandwidth. I like to spread things around. I'm not comfortable with being in the spotlight for too long. I like to share that around. So
Yeah.
I would say, and I'm not the most social person in the world. And, it's interesting. I see the difference because my wife is very social. So, yeah, I would say that it's something definitely that I have experienced, but I'm not 100% comfortable doing it all the time. And I know that often when I tell clients, when I tell anybody about that, they actually are kind of surprised. They're like, really? For somebody who's so
Yeah.
confident to get up and speak in front of people? Yeah, but I'm just not really comfortable with that. So,
You know what? I'm actually not surprised by that. For one, I know you, but two, I think to be a coach of anything, you have to not want to be in the center, because at the end of the day, the
yeah.
coach is never going to be in the spotlight. A
Mm-hmm.
good coach is never going to be in the spotlight. A coach is going to be helping, teaching, expertise, coaching, standing for your clients for their greatness, but you're not going to be the person who actually gets up on stage or delivers that killer, sales presentation. You're not going to be there with your client. So that actually doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
And to be a coach, I think you really need to be a team player.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it wasn't something, I mean, if you had asked me that question decades ago, I would have given you a totally different answer. So that mindset, I realize now as you're bringing it into my awareness, that mindset really was a part of me becoming a coach, because you hear the old phrase, those who can't do teach.
Yep.
Well, that's not always true,
No.
because there was a time when I was doing, and I was really successful about that. But I had to let go of that feeling, which didn't necessarily serve me in terms of personality. And I really wanted a more noble pursuit, which when I tell everybody, they ask, what is it that you do? I say, well, everybody has a story to tell. I just help them tell it. So
that's great. Yeah.
That seems to me like a much more noble purpose than listen to me. It's more like, no, listen to all of them. That's a bigger reach. I think that's a bigger thing to be able to do.
Yeah.
Because
that's awesome.
they all have stories that reach how many other people?
That's right.
It's one of those that from that little seed, everything grows.
Exactly. That's cool. I like that. One of the things I love about doing this podcast is my guest. I always get inspired by all of you as well. So I'm thinking about like the whole thing of those who can't do teach. Yeah, sometimes, but it's like any other profession in the world. In my opinion, there are those who fail at it or give up on themselves before they get good enough. They practice. I'm a big believer that through practice, if you care about something, almost everybody can generate what they want if you practice, if you have a passion for it.
Yes.
That whole thing about like, if you can't do teach, I don't, yes, there are people like that in the world. There are lots of people who sell to coaches that are like that in the world, who will sell to people. There's lots of people who do that. But to your point, it kind of actually excludes all the nobleness of like, hey, this is actually what I believe my calling is or my purpose is. And I could go out and teach this. I can go out and do this. I actually choose to expand my reach and expand the world's horizon by what I want to put on the world, as opposed to just doing it for myself and for my family or for my small group of clients or something. So thank you for inspiring me, Paul, to think about that.
No. And what you just said, Jason, was even a more of a refinement of what I said as you were explaining. You're right, because it's not necessarily, and we were getting into the semantics of it all, when you say those who can't do teach. Well, if you can't do it, think about the expansion of that phrase. I can't do this anymore, meaning I don't choose to do this anymore.
Right.
So what can I do with all of that built up experience? What can I do with it? Do I have to just figure that it's a lost leader and that's it? Change direction? Never. You bring all of that with you, you know? It's
Yeah.
you take all of that. I can't tell you how many times I have given advice that I realize was given to me based on a life experience that I had in what seems like another lifetime,
Oh yeah.
decades ago.
Oh
Something
yeah.
that I learned in my life experience, in a very varied life experience, that I now impart to someone because they don't have to necessarily go through the experience to learn the lesson if I can communicate it to them with my words and actions. So they benefit from not having to, knock their head against the wall in some of the ways that I have.
Exactly. That's cool. So let's move on to my next question for you. And I think you're going to like this one.
Okay.
I think this is going to be in your wheelhouse, Paul. So I give you 5 minutes and you get to deliver any speech you want to the entire world. What is it that you would give your speech on and why?
The first thing that comes to mind is kindness. You're saying I have a free reign to talk about whatever it is I want. I don't have to
You have a
prove
global TED Talk that we all get to
That's
listen
right.
to at once. Yes, exactly.
I don't have to prove to anybody that it's not too much of a soft topic. I'm
Nope.
taking this as free reign to talk about whatever I think is important. And I really
Absolutely.
think that that's something that's really, really important. When I get asked to speak, now I'm really talking about the direct application of what I do into a business situation. And I know it sounds like kindness is not something that would necessarily fit into the world of business. At least it's not the first thing that you would want to insert into a successful career. But I really think that it is the most important part of a successful life. So, yeah, always err on the side of kindness. Oh, yeah. And the other thing is humility.
Yes.
They often go hand in hand. They don't always go hand in hand. But I think, and this is something else that I've discovered, and again, these are just my personal thoughts, but anyone who is struggling with their own spirituality, just explore your humility. Humility is the doorway to your own personal spirituality. So if we look at kindness and we look at humility, those are really, I think that they're wonderful aspirations that most of the problems, challenges, and imbalances we feel can be addressed just by going back to those basic building blocks.
Yeah. 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 I had something that really triggered me a couple weeks ago. And I took some time to explore it for myself and with some support from people. It turns out it was all about eating a big old slice of humble pie at the end of the day. It really had me have to humble myself. And yeah, it was so triggering. It was like an ego-based thing, like at a most basic level. And then at the end of it, I'm like, oh, I just need to be humble about this, and it'll all be fine. And it's just like freed up a ton for me by just coming from a humility versus I'm owed this or this is how it should be. So yeah, I'm so with you on the humility thing. I learned I got a firsthand experience taste of that a few weeks ago, which is not that great in the moment. Doesn't taste that great in the moment.
No. And humility is really what everyone calls upon when you have to let go.
Yeah.
And that is one of the most difficult things for me to do on a daily basis is to be able to let go of things.
Yeah.
And usually the things we can't let go of are very closely tethered to our egos.
Yep.
So if we're willing to subvert that in a very authentic way, not in a way where we're trying to fool our ego, but literally let go of it in a very spiritual and humble way, it'll make the process a lot better. And if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like that's exactly what you were doing. You were letting go.
I had to let go because I was too attached. Not to say that I'm still not attached to certain things about it, but I was, it was taking up a lot of emotional and mental space for me. Kindness and humility, man. Can you imagine the world like that?
Yeah.
All right.
I know. I think many people are afraid it would be boring. Yikes.
That's funny. Like, this is boring. We're just humble and nice to each other. This is so boring. Why would we do that? Forget it.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's like this whole world just feels like a cup of honey. I don't get it anymore. Where's the spicy pizza and the buffalo wings?
Exactly. Well, this has been great so far, Paul. We're going to take a really brief commercial break, and we'll be right back. And we're going to learn a lot more about you. So we'll be right back.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
And we are back. Paul, are you ready to get into some more details and some more, some more wisdom for us? Because I think you've got a lot to share. Awesome. Awesome.
What I love about this, Jason, is, and you and I are cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
That you have an idea of what you want to talk about, and I have an idea of what I want to talk about. But knowing what we're going to talk about is totally up in the air, and I love that.
Way more fun. Yeah. Oh no, it's way more fun that way.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, next time I have you on, Paul, though, I'd like if your press agent could send me the list of 10 questions that I can ask you about that you'll have the nice canned acting answers for. That would be fantastic.
Well, number one, I don't have a press agent.
Oh, no.
and number two, just like, you very politely asked a few days ago if there was anything. And I just said, no, let's just go. Let's go.
Do it.
And having had many discussions with you in the past, I know that the conversation will be interesting and engaging. So I just leave it at that. We'll see where it goes.
I'm glad. I feel like you trust me more than I trust myself. That's perfect.
I do. I don't know. I do trust you as far as to what degree compared to your own trust.
Exactly.
But I
guess you'll never know. Let's do it. All right. No. So here we go, Paul. So what I'd like to spend some time on, and again, talking about improvisation and creating this as we go along, is some space for you to talk about what's led you to today. And I don't mean like today, but to what you're up to today. So you've had a long and storied career doing a lot of different cool things. Just love to hear like kind of what's led you to this, and anything else you'd like to share with the audience that you'd like to bring out here today on the podcast.
Sure. Okay. So in other words, what leads me to this space where I am right now, I would say the thing that I do value has changed slightly, and I used to always say, and this is a question that I often ask people as part of a personal branding exercise and a networking exercise. And I know you and I have talked about this just briefly, Jason, and that is for every individual to be able to describe themselves so that if you're able to describe yourself very clearly, that's a very clear message to give to somebody else who will then think of you in those terms whenever a situation arises. So I usually start by asking, well, what is the talent that you rely on most often? Mm-hmm. And what I used to say in my public speaking training days at a very large studio in New York City was, as an example, I would say to clients, for instance, I always really rely on my intuition. I really do, as that skill that I can call upon when I really am in a place of uncertainty. And that was kind of turned on its head when the crisis hit recently. And so what happened was, now that I can look back and I realize it's not a big expanse of time, but just like everyone else, I was forced to change and forced to transform. And I really felt like that which I was relying on, which was my intuition, was not the thing that I needed to rely on to get me to a place of transformation. So that intuition, and I know it's going to sound like these two things are very, very similar, but yet you will, as a coach, definitely recognize the difference. Now, the thing that I rely on the most is not so much intuition, though that's still there, but I really rely on my curiosity. And it's not just curiosity in other people. It's the curiosity in what I will come up with next, because I don't exactly know. And that excites me on a daily basis. So I would say that curiosity has brought me to this place. But as we were talking just a little bit prior to the podcast about what's going on in terms of the things that I'm doing, and I mentioned, I've been working at this big studio, or was working at a big studio in New York City till almost the end of 2019, and then decided to go out and start to do my own thing. And that was pretty much kicked off in January of 2020. And then March of 2020 came along and everything changed. So at that point, I really had to quote Tennessee Williams, rely on the kindness of strangers. And I reached out to a community that I was a part of, but had never really interacted with. And I reached out to a bunch of fellow Forbes Coaches Council members. And I asked them if we could create an ad hoc collective and just get together on a weekly, bi-weekly. Turned out we got together 3 times a week in the beginning and just shared best practices, passed along information to each other, just because we were all kind of knocked off our pins. So I just put it out there and just basically said, look, guys, I feel lost. If you feel the same way, let's put this together and see what happens. And it turned out to be one of the best experiences of my life. And I now have a community of coaches that I communicate with on a weekly basis, that I invite to be interviewed, just as you're doing with me here today. And it's a great experience of transforming and getting to a place where I feel like I'm really serving my purpose. It hasn't come to full fruition just yet, but I feel that that's an important part of what got me here.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to I think this is going to come up in a little bit anyway, based on some of the other questions I'm going to ask you about. So I'm actually not going to ask you about Blabbit right now, because my intuition tells me we're going to get to this anyway. So,
Okay.
What I want to do next,
Yes.
or where I'd like to go next, is I'd like to give you the hosting reins, and you're a host of your own content. So I trust you to take good care of me,
Okay.
and I'm going to get into the
Mhm.
into the passenger seat or the guest couch. And Paul, I'd love to see if there's anything you want to ask me about that I can answer for you, answer for the audience. And as a guy who's committed to curiosity, I think you're going to come up. I think there's going to be something really interesting here. And I've said this in the podcast before. I have no idea what Paul's going to ask me right now. This is not anything that's scripted at all. So, Paul, is there something that you're curious about, or something that you'd like to ask me that I can answer for you and for the audience?
Yeah. Okay. I will. The first thing that comes into my mind is, as a coach yourself, when you put together your personal brand, and I know in some instances, and please correct me if I'm wrong, excuse me, but you do refer to yourself as an accomplishment coach. Is that true?
No. So I don't. I'm actually a graduate and a leader in a company called Accomplishment Coaching. So I think that's where you may have seen that.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Which is totally fine. Yeah.
I just thought that was really an interesting idea, and I'm glad you're giving me and giving your listeners some of the details, because I just thought that was really an interesting way to set yourself apart in terms of being a coach. And I know we're delving a little bit into personal branding here, but then again, we were talking about spirituality 10 minutes ago. So we're all over the place.
Yeah.
But I love the idea that sounds like a differentiator, that it sort of sets you apart.
Yeah.
Because there are many coaches, and I understand the familiarity of saying, well, I'm a leadership coach, I'm an executive coach. Even when I say I'm a public speaking coach, it sounds like you are one of many. But
yeah, totally.
The idea of accomplishment coach, it's interesting because it sounds like something different that we're not accustomed to hearing. So,
yeah,
do you ever use what other handles do you use when people say, well, what is, if someone were to say, well, what is Jason Frizzell? What does he do? And you could write the script. What would you have somebody say about you?
So this is an interesting question, because it's something that I still struggle with. And the reason I struggle with it is, I'm going to get to the answer that pops in my mind, but the reason I struggle with it is, and I think this is normal. I was telling you this earlier. I have a mastermind that I'm in with a lot of other, not any other coaches, a bunch of other entrepreneurs and such. And what I see is that I know who I want to work with. So psychographically, I know who I want to work with. I know the type of people I want to work with. The challenge that I run into is the type of people that I want to work with bring me all sorts of different things. So I have a resistance to pigeonholing myself, and I know that that's not healthy. Like I know that this stuff is all like things I need to work through. But if I had to summarize what I do for most of my clients, not all of them, because some of my clients don't need this from me, I provide them a few things. I provide them, first of all, a place to truly be themselves and no agenda. A place to come and get accountability and goal setting from no agenda, meaning that, so at work, for example, like say you work in a corporation and you tell your boss, hey, next week I'm going to have this project done, and you don't, that's a problem almost all the time. You tell your coach, hey, I'm going to go do these things this week, and you come back a week later and you say, hey, actually I didn't get to them, and here's why. Instead of you're not going to be in trouble with me, I'm going to ask you if you want to explore what actually came up for you. and taking a look at your relationship to commitments, or what you say you're going to do and then you don't do. And, sometimes people will be like, well, you know what? I realized later on in the week, it just wasn't important to me. Great.
Mm-hmm.
So how else did that show up for you? Oh, I realize I make a lot of commitments to my kids that I'm not committed to. And so, like, going back to your question, a place for people to be themselves, a place for people to get accountability without an agenda. And I hate this word because it's overused. But the thing that I provide my clients, if you interview them, like it is clarity. And I don't like claim to be like a clarity coach, but I'm a well-trained coach, just like you're a well-trained public speaking coach and consultant and branding, all the things you do. I have a lot of training, a lot of time, a lot of training. I've worked with a coach for years. Like there's a lot of coaches who don't have any training that are out there saying, I'm a clarity coach or I'm an accountability coach. And so actually knowing the ways to do that with your clients and bringing them to a place where they get clear about what they want. And yes, as human beings, things change for us all the time. You get clear about something and then something happens and you don't get clear anymore, et cetera. It's all fine. But having people figure out what they're committed to, and also thinks that that there is not necessarily anything that needs to be fixed or wrong with clients, but what is the thing that they want to do next? Mm-hmm. So I think what I'm hearing from you, Paul, is pointing at like accomplishment. It doesn't mean that you haven't accomplished a ton of things, but what's the next thing for you? As opposed to, I think the kind of the premise in the industry sometimes is, oh, I need to hire a coach because there's something wrong with me. Oh, there's something need to be fixed. There's something that I can't do myself. And yeah, you know what? For me personally, I can muscle through almost anything and at some point figure it out. But for me and a coach, and at the end of the day, this is my superpower with my clients is I help them accelerate that process. And that's why I work with a coach, because it accelerates the things that I want to create in my life. And having that person who stands for me with no agenda and is there for me and allows me a safe space and allows me to explore things is what actually accelerates my process, because that's how I operate. And when I'm here by myself, I know where I'm going to end up going, and it's going to be into a deep, dark place of judgment and assessment, and having someone be like, bro, like, I'm going to wrap with this. It's like, I'm a big sports fan, right? So sports coaches, what's the first thing a good sports coach will tell you? You go out there and you drop the big pass. Pick yourself up and go do it again. Pick yourself up and go do it again. Left to my own devices, oh, I dropped that pass. I'm probably going to sit the next game out because I don't want to fail again. And like having that person be there to push you from love and from support, not from you have to do it this way. So I think like that's for me, it's like a space with no agenda, accountability, and acceleration. That's how I would summarize it.
Interesting. Really interesting. And I know that some of the phrases that I associate with you, your mindset, and the things that you make people aware of, I love the phrase that I know you use, which is, are you where you want to be in your life? Which is a valid question, very hard question to ask. And I find that we often rely on coaches to ask the questions that we find it difficult to ask ourselves.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense. However, it's hard to put all of that into one title.
Well, it is. And this is where you get lumped, like you said, you get lumped into a million of the same people.
Yes, I know.
And so this is where at the end of the day, it's a personal experience, and you meet people and you talk to them and tell them what you do. If I get somebody on with me and it's the right fit, it's the right fit. The external branding and marketing of it also, in my opinion, in the coaching industry can be very challenging because there's a lot of fluff and a lot of shine out there that doesn't mean anything other than these people have a good website designer and know how to write good copy.
Yes. Yeah.
And, hey, like it's like that in any industry, right? And I'm not thinking of anybody specifically. There's a lot of amazing coaches out there who do amazing work. And there's also a lot of people who have zero training. All they do is give a bunch of advice and they have good marketing.
True. Are there some go-to questions that you ask when you meet with someone for the first time? Someone who maybe both needs needs to ask themselves certain questions and thereby needs to have you ask them certain questions until they get good at it on their own.
Yeah.
What would be one of those questions as you're determining what direction to go in, or what to work on first?
Yeah, absolutely. No, very simple. What has you interested in working with a coach?
Interesting.
Simple.
Okay. Yeah. What's the motivation for you being here?
Yeah, why are we here? Why are we spending the time? We're both busy. We both make money per hour or whatever. So sometimes that'll flush out for people that they don't want to work with a coach, with any coach. Sometimes sometimes people have a very specific thing that's like a big pain point for them. Like, oh, I need to work. I've been told at my job that I'm not good at executive presence and I have pain at work and I want to hire an executive coach. Sometimes people will be like, hey, my friend works with a coach and they work with you and they say it's amazing and that I'm not and sometimes the answer is like, I'm not exactly sure, but I just see something in it for myself. And I love those kind of people because that was me when I hired my first coach. I didn't really know why I was hiring her. I just really saw something without knowing exactly what it was going to be. And that for me is actually the coolest way to do it, because then you get to come into that coaching relationship without, it's got to go this way. It's got to be these things. I'm paying for this versus like, oh, like, what do we create together? Which, probably pretty apparent on this podcast that Paul and I both like to create stuff on the fly and improvise. That's way more fun for me.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And, really in my experience though, because what I do is very specific, yet it is very varied. People do come in and I normally will say, well, tell me about an experience where you were doing well with public speaking.
Right.
And then conversely, tell me about an experience where you weren't doing well. Because, and I like to reinforce, everybody has these skills, everybody has the tools. It's just you, like everyone else, want to be more consistent. That's all. And that usually gives them the opportunity then to share with me the things that are bothering them or the things that they feel good about. Conversely, because like I always say, we're all on this journey. Yeah. Definitely in the public speaking realm or in the presentation realm. I know I'm always trying to get better. There are always things to do.
Exactly. Good call. Good question, Paul. I appreciate that. That's a good one.
Sure.
Getting me stewing the old brain over here. All right. So I'm going to bring it back to you now and ask you about what you're passionate about. Something that you haven't shared with us yet. So what's something that you're passionate about?
Something that I'm passionate about. Well, I tend to have kind of tunnel vision simply because the things that I focus on really do, they flow through so many things that we do. The thing that I'm passionate about, and see, the thing that's tripping me up here a little bit, Jason, is that I haven't already talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
And it doesn't mean that I've talked about everything. It just means that I, like you, I wear my passion on my sleeve. And I just kind of go with it, I find that really unblocks my flow. And I find that it helps other people too, to be able to unblock that ability to go and grab the things and be spontaneous and feel connected and engaged. And yeah, I would say the thing that I'm passionate about is fairness. Definitely fairness. I know I brought up kindness already and humility, but fairness, which again sounds like a slice of the same apple. And it kind of is because everything is so connected. But just the idea of just follow the same rules. So, this all sounds very, warm and fuzzy, I know. Follow the golden rule, treat others the way you would have them treat you. Just treat everyone with respect and be fair. That's something that
Yeah.
I'm really passionate about. I really am.
I
Oh,
love
and I
that.
thought of something else. I thought I'm really passionate about music.
Yeah. Yeah. There you
And I'm
go.
really passionate about learning music because I am
Mm.
also a musician.
What do you play?
And
Or what do you play? Or do you
I
sing?
play a
Like,
bunch
what's your?
of I play a bunch of instruments. You know, of course, my first instrument is my voice, is my singing, but I do play guitar and piano and saxophone and flute and clarinet. I play a lot of percussion and whatnot. So I do. I'm passionate about that, and I do have the wonderful experience of having worked with a lot of people who are actually professional musicians in the past. So when I go to listen to them play, depending on what the environment is, I often get an opportunity to get up and play with them,
Yeah.
which
Cool.
is is quite is quite a wonderful thing to experience because it's nice. It's nice. Not only the level of music is amazing, but the fact that they have enough respect for me and I have enough respect for them that they do invite me up. And it's not just based on past experience or friendship. I try to make it a little bit better. And it's something that I'm passionate about, but at this point in my life, it's just a hobby.
Yeah. Gotcha. Very cool. All right. So, Paul, what's the thing that you're most proud of in your life? And I think I know the answer here, but I'm gonna.
The thing that I'm most proud of right now is being able to help people, is being a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
is being known as a teacher. I always knew when I was raising my kids that that's what I was doing. In fact, that's what we all do, Jason, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, we all teach. I know you have little ones. Mine are
I
all
do.
grown up at this point. And I know the challenges that you're going through, but I also know the wonderful satisfaction that you're going through as well.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, I
What
love being a teacher.
what's your favorite what's your favorite thing to teach people? Like if you had somebody come to you with a specific thing that they said, Paul's my guy, what's the thing that just gets you so excited to teach people or to coach people on?
My favorite thing is something that I call discovering their bumper stickers. And I know that I have brought this term up maybe once or twice with you, but for your listeners, I want to explain what that is. It's a term that is not foreign to anyone. We all know what a bumper sticker is, but in terms of public speaking and personal branding, it's a very short characterization of what it is that you're trying to say, what your message is, whether it is on social media or whether it's in your promotional materials or whether it is a speech that you're giving or whether you're getting up to introduce yourself at a networking event. It's discovering what that bumper sticker is. And I never know what it is, and my clients never know what it is. But when we engage in the business of discovering where that is, and I listen to somebody talk, and then I give them back their own words in terms of what I hear as being their bumper sticker, and they realize that it already existed within them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most exciting thing that I get to do, because
Nice.
it's really eye-opening. And I know that once somebody realizes that this is something they already possess, it's incredibly empowering. And it's really those are some of my most favorite moments.
That's cool, Paul. All right. What's something that you're afraid might actually be true about you?
Afraid that might actually be true about me. I think that in an act of self-care, there are times when I can actually be dismissive and think that I'm protecting myself, but without realizing that I am dismissing.
Dismissing others
Oh,
or
yeah.
dismissing yourself?
No, I'd say dismissing others.
Okay.
I always keep a very healthy connection to myself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that that's actually true, though. Typical of a fear, I don't think about it all that much, because who likes to think about their fears?
Yeah.
And also, I have another one. I think I fear that I'm really bad with money. Like I have an unhealthy relationship with money. So, that's something that when I have enough cash, I'll explore it.
Yeah.
But it's true. So I fear that that's probably true as well.
Cool. What is, I want to go back to public speaking for a few minutes, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
And I know this is something that I'm sure a lot of people will be listening. Almost everybody has an interest in this in some way, use it for their job or use it at, church or wherever people get up and do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you had somebody let's say we had a call-in show. Said, hey, let's take calls from the audience, and they call in and say, hey, what's the question for Paul? Somebody they say, hey, you know what, Paul, I don't like it. I've been told I'm not very good at it. Do you have 3 quick tips that makes a difference for somebody the first time they get up and use them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The first one is, believe it or not, it's not all in your head.
Yeah.
Most people think it is. The answer to you getting better is actually in your body. And that, for most people, they, number one, don't believe it, or it just simply blows their mind. But it's true, because what I always find interesting, and as much as I'm a voice geek guy, I'm also a big words guy. And I often contemplate the fact that we utilize the word feeling for something for a sensation, for an idea, for an emotion. But we also use the word feeling for something that you can physically touch. It's the same word.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to meld those two things together and remind everybody that when you are in a nervous situation, which I'm assuming comes from not wanting to get up and public speak, because guess what? We all feel the same forces at work.
Yeah.
I always tell everyone your lifelines are in your body. And there's really only 2. I mean, we can get into a lot of details of these 2, but one is breathing, being in control of your breathing, deliberately in control of your breathing. And number 2 is your body language, or more specifically, your coordinated gestures. Not because they look good, but because they feel good. And they reconnect you and reground you to your body. When your body can feel more grounded, you will begin to habituate with whatever your physical response is to public speaking, whether it is a shaky voice, sweaty palms, weak knees, whatever that fight or flight response is. You have to shield against it with something physical. There's too much going on in your head. So that would be the basic advice that I would give.
Very nice, Paul. Very nice.
Thanks.
Okay. Start to wrap up for today. Want to ask you if there's anything else that's popped into your mind as we've been talking, as I've said something, as you've said something that you want to come back to and share with the audience at this point. And if the answer is no, that's totally fine as well.
Yeah. No, I think we've gone into a lot of really interesting areas. Something I actually read today, and it was, again, a good coaching friend of mine wrote an article for Forbes, and I finally read it. and it only took me about a week. I had it saved, and I finally went back and read it. And she said, and she was actually talking about the experience of writing a book. And I know what that experience feels like. And we both have commiserated that it is not for the faint of heart.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that it isn't is because of this quote that I thought was brilliant. Her quote was, "Vulnerability is required for growth and development."
Yeah.
And nothing makes you feel more vulnerable than putting it out there and writing a book. There are many other things that make you feel really vulnerable, but just remember, you can utilize that vulnerability and know that it is setting the stage for growth and development. So many things in life are the way you look at it. And I thought that was a really good perspective.
Yeah, that's cool. I want to go back again here as we wrap up to Blabbit, because I realized I didn't come back around to that for you. And my question is, like, how can the audience connect with you, get to know you, find you? And I think this might be a good time to talk a little bit about Blabbit, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's interesting. Blabbit came about in the summer, and I was working with a buddy of mine, Glenn Ingram, on putting together a training program to be able to offer people various skills in terms of public speaking and sales, presenting, and personal branding. These things that are really essential to anyone who is in business. And we wanted it to be a platform where people could go to get information. They could certainly go there to get free access to a lot of different experts. But inevitably, if they did desire to get training, it would be somewhere they could also go for that. So we came up with the idea of Blabbit because initially, and still in an ongoing way, we're sharing a lot of inside secrets and a lot of expert advice. So we thought it was a nice, simple name. And we have a very simple website, which is blabbit.net. And we have a very simple weekly webinar or weekly broadcast that's basically, we call it the Friday Blabbit Habit. And it happens at 12 noon. And you can go to blabbit.net and get access to it. And we have wonderful coaches like Mr. Jason Frizzell.
Thank you, Paul.
We interviewed you just a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
with
so fun.
Wonderful insights, just sharing so many of the experiences and the journey that you've been on. And that's the kind of thing that we do. And, it's very similar to what I'm doing with you right now. And it all came out of the guests, all came out of that collective of coaches that I started with way back in March. And then interestingly, one coach would recommend another coach, and it would just start to grow and grow and grow. So not everybody is necessarily a part of the Forbes Coaches Council, but everybody that we have on is an experienced and a very impassioned coach who sees the value in sharing their thoughts. And so we just, we kind of go in a free form way wherever the questions will take us, very much like today's broadcast. And we always kind of steer everything back to what we believe are the three essential pillars in most people's businesses, and just ideally talk about the direct application of those skills. And whether if you need a little bit of advice or a little bit of a thought awareness in that area, then the Friday Blabbit is perfect. It's very eye-opening. Every coach brings their own unique flavor.
Yeah,
it's great.
Very cool. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Really
Blabbit. Yeah, it was really fun. It was a blast. I really had a good time with you and Glenn. All right, Paul. So besides Blabbit, where else can the audience connect with you and find you?
Well, I always say, please go to the various social media platforms. I keep it pretty simple. It's Paul Geiger for Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. But I also have a company. It's called Public Speaking Advantage. And I do have a Facebook page for that. And I have a LinkedIn for both myself and Public Speaking Advantage, plus social media platforms for Blabbit. You can reach me there. So we always check for comments and links and whatnot. So publicspeakingadvantage.com is one. My own personal website, Paul Geiger, GEIGER.com, and then Blabbit.net. So
sorry, I was about to make a bad joke. So what was that, Paul? What was it?
Yeah, exactly.
Geiger. I've never heard that before. That's really a strange name.
That's right. Wait, what?
Wait, what? Thanks so much.
Yeah, that was a good message. It just wasn't clear enough.
Yeah, Paul, Phil Ginger. That was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
it is funny. Exactly. I just have to share with you. We both do a lot of networking, and sometimes you just run into people, especially back when we did in-person stuff, and you just know they're not listening to anything you're saying. And if you didn't have a name tag on, they would forget your name within 5 seconds of you giving it to them, because they're just assessing whether you're somebody they can sell something to, or whether you're useful to them in that moment. It's so funny.
Well, you know what's something interesting, and it's something that I started doing, and for no reason whatsoever, except going back to the fairness, kindness, humility thing that we're talking about. Whenever I do interact with somebody over the phone, and we were talking about this earlier, about talking to an insurance company or a credit card company or whoever, or ordering something or making a reservation, normally they do introduce themselves, or they do say what their name is.
Mm-hmm.
And either I ask them to repeat it if I haven't heard it the first time, or if I did hear it clearly enough, I write it down or make a mental note. And I find when I'm done with that interaction and I thank them and then use their name, I think that's goodwill. I think that's spreading goodwill.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Those experiences are not always frustrating to me. I see them as opportunities, and I treat them as such.
Yeah. Very cool. All right, Paul, last thing for us here as we wrap for today. Love if you would leave us with some words of wisdom that fit on an Instagram post, or for the old schoolers listening, a Post-it note, which is a piece of paper that sticks to stuff. Yes. I'm being facetious. People probably know what a Post-it note is, but
almost like
so something short and
sticker,
sweet,
right?
It's like, So Paul, what's your bumper sticker? There you go. Fit it on a bumper sticker, because you got to be able to read it.
Sure. All right. My bumper sticker would be, you have a story. Tell it like you mean it.
I love that. Yeah, that's so good. And again, you're inspiring me, because I think that's been something that I've been dealing with. Is like, I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but when you tell your story, and when you say story, sometimes I think of that as just like your 30-second pitch in a networking meeting.
Yeah.
There's times when I'm not bought in on what I'm saying, and it just doesn't feel good.
Right.
And like, what would it be like to actually just own that?
Yes. Yeah. And owning that story and realizing really that you have one, you do have one story, but often the messages that you're conveying filtered through that story are not always going to be the same. Telling the story is important, but like you were saying earlier, Jason, actively listening so you understand what the potential relevance could be of telling that story to that person. Ultimately, we're all looking to connect. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and I can't wait for the audience to get to know you, hear what you're all about. Please, if you hear this, connect with Paul. He's amazing. You put out some really, really valuable free content on YouTube as well. Got a lot of takeaways. And Paul, I wish you the very best of luck with everything. And we are local to each other, so I can't wait to actually see you, give you a high five, a hug, whatever it is we're going to do when we're back in person at some point. next year. Don't know when yet, but that'll be really great to connect with you live in the city. And just best of luck with everything you're up to. And thank you so much for being on.
My pleasure, Jason. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. And I look forward to the next time.
Yes, you too. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook and give us a shout out or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.